now we kind of have a special talk because it's a quite different format. We're supposed to have one person who's online and one person here with us in the room who I do not see yet though.
They're outside, right before the door. I can get them in.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, if you could find your seat so we can continue. Okay. So we are ready. Haben wir gehört, ob Kevin jetzt online?
Ja, ich habe überhaupt keine Infos, aber ich habe nur gehört, dass es angeblich irgendwie funktioniert. Test.
Ja. Okay. Okay, so can we start? So as I mentioned before, if you weren't all here, it's a bit of a technical talk, which we haven't had before. So it's like one person online, one person in the room. So it's more difficult to set up.
And it's not only one person in the room and one person online. The other person is in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah.
Went to a concert yesterday evening and had a great time, and is probably not very happy that we wake him up right now. No, he's going to be very happy. Kevin,
I'm already gonna start presenting you two. So here with us we have Wolfgang Wimmer. He's a consultant to actors, but about mental health, but also has a background in coaching and is part of Psychedelics in Recovery. And Kevin Franciotti, who we expect online and are not sure yet though. He's from Denver, as you mentioned. He's a psychotherapist and in counseling for addiction for maybe 15 years now. So very excited to hear what you have to say for us.
Okay, so I take over.
Then,
and first of all, I really want to welcome you, and I don't know if Kevin is online now, but anyway, we are presenting to you Psychedelics in Recovery. The short form is PIR. But first of all, I really want to thank all the organizers of the Insight Conference to even provide this space. And to be a little more comfortable, I have to say a few personal things. I'm very excited. Not only because we are presenting here at the conference, but it's a strange moment for me for two reasons. A, I'm presenting a a program that was designed by Kevin, and he was supposed to be here, and I really wanted him to be here because he's one of the co-founders, but it was not possible to arrange it. So I am presenting now his presentation, which is a little new for me, So sorry when I use notes, because I want to stick to his curriculum. People that know me know what it means for me, because I'm a talker. I can talk until it drops from the ceiling. And the other thing is, I really want to thank Dr. Gerd Gründer for his talk yesterday, because it touched me profoundly, because he spoke about his friend that had problems with the medication, and what he explained was that he became an addict, No matter where the drugs came from, from the street or from the prescription or from the grandmother, he had problems with his addiction, and nobody was able to help him. And then he had this psychedelic event in Holland. I don't know who of you have been at the talk. And he realized, that if you want to have a lot of sun, you have to cope with the shadow, which is not very original, but it's very helpful if you are able to go through this process. Now out there are hundreds of thousands of people that are in recovery programs. They are called clean addicts, clean addicts or alcoholics. Now they're in an abstinence program, which means they do not have access to psychedelic therapy, because psychedelics still are regarded as drugs and as mind-altering substances. And in an abstinence program, you do not use mind-altering substances. So to make it possible to offer all these people out there the possibility of using psychedelic therapy, we needed to bridge a huge gap. And that's what PIR does. Now that's my side. But starting with the presentation, Kevin and we are here on behalf of a growing number of people in recovery programs, as I mentioned, that are not only interested, but in desperate need for psychedelic therapy and integration. Most of the 12-step recovery programs like AA and NA require total abstinence from all mind-altering substances, which includes all psychedelics. And therefore, we are honored to present a movement that bridges abstinence-based recovery programs with the promise of psychedelic healing and psychospiritual development. Now comes the technical part. It works. So first a bit of a, oh, that was one too much. Thank you for helping. You see, I'm really nervous, especially when it comes to technical stuff. But first a bit of history. Before the founding of Alcoholics Anonymous, short AA, in 1935 in Akron, Ohio, alcoholism and addiction was understood as an untreatable disease. There was no way to do something about it. So someone addicted was unable to turn around their lives or receive any family support. The few options available to an addict included removal from society through imprisonment or institutionalization. Now this means there was a third possibility, and it was used a lot. It was just dying, That was the other option. AA opened the door to see addiction as an illness that belongs into the domain of medical and psychological treatment. That was the first possibility to do something about it. Oh, now we're back. Oh, okay. So Alcoholics Anonymous, and later also NA, which is short for Narcotics Anonymous, advocated alcoholism, and in general for any addiction, to be recognized as a disease of body, mind, and spirit. That was the basis to legitimize treatment of addiction in abstinence programs. And it remains the dominant form of understanding of recovery from addiction. What is very important here, I don't know how many of you know about 12-step programs. There's there's this part in it, that says very clearly that that a spiritual awakening helps, in the recovery process. Now that's a topic we could discuss for hours, But it was for the first time that it was said very, very clearly that it's a disease of body, mind, and spirit. It's not only a physical thing, it's a mental thing. The spiritual bedrock of AA came in the form of a mystical experience described by AA's co-founder, Dr. Bill Wilson. He called it his white light encounter. It happened actually during a stay at the Towns Hospital in New York City. This was in the late 60s. Dr. Bill, as he was called by his fellow AAs, still suffered from a chronic depression, and that was over 2 years, two decades of sobriety. So he was in his own program, sober for over 20 years, but he had still, heavy depression. And so he sought help. And the author Don Latin describes that Bill's experience may have been elicited by psychoactive substances like LSD-25 and belladonna that was given to patients by Towns Hospital to enhance the therapy. Now we know from personal statements of Dr. Bill that it was actually LSD-25, that he was using at the time. He was not using it, but he became doses in his treatment sessions. Bill Wilson linked his LSD experience to his white light encounter that also generated a vision of a chain of drunks around the world, all helping each other, which became more than true. And it was really something that he encountered in his stay there. Now this more or less speaks for itself. The problem was that he was so convinced, of his own experience, like we heard yesterday, that he thought that it could be a profound help for people in recovery programs to have access to this psychedelic experience. At the time, the real therapeutic use was not as developed as it is today. So he thought just giving the medication to the addicts could maybe help. This caused a big misunderstanding. And the AA Fellowship went into opposition to Bill's LSD advocacy. Nevertheless, he published a series of articles in the AA journal Grapevine where he outlined emotional sobriety, which was completely new at the time, that you would also need to recover in an emotional way. This influential message coincides with the period he received LSD-25 treatment. So we assume very profoundly that it was strongly connected. And today, Dr. Bill's experience with psychedelic therapy has vanished completely from the AA narrative. That's, I don't want to go too deep into the 12-step program fellowship thing, but there's a lot of information about anything, but nothing about this period that one of the co-founders had his own psychedelic experiences. It just was blanked out completely. PIR, as a 12-step fellowship, sees the therapeutic use of psychedelics not as a relapse. It's a tool to treat depression, anxiety disorder, or PTSD, very common with long-time clean and sober addicts. Treatment can be included in 12-step recovery and shared openly in PIR meetings. Now, basics. So PIR members resume with Bill Wilson's vision that psychedelics can play an important role in supporting personal recovery and at the same time recognize the need for fellowship unity. Sharing honestly is an important tool of recovery. PIR provides this tool in their meetings. Any member of existing substance-related behavioral or family support fellowships, 12-step programs are welcome. Now I have to say something about this sharing honestly as an important tool of recovery. It's a little bit strange for me because it's a little bit like a coming out, you know, because I know so much about 12-step programs, you know, I mean, like you count it on your fingers that maybe I know this because I attend meetings. Usually it is a completely anonymous program. That's why I'm nervous, you know, I'm not walking around saying, I'm going to meetings, you know? So here I do it only to get it a little bit closer to you. So we are meeting in meetings on a regular basis without any therapeutic influence, you know, sharing with each other, you know. And one of the things that is very important for us is that we are only as sick as our secrets. And so we try to share honestly about weird stuff, you know, because one addict listening to another addict sharing about how he bought a carpet at IKEA can be a profound identification tool, you know. Because if you haven't been able to buy anything for 2.5 years, you know, it means that going to IKEA and buying a carpet can be a wonderful revelation. And it can create hope for somebody else, you know. If you share this stuff in a therapeutic environment, usually people say, what? I don't know what this is all about, you know. For us, it is very important. So when I use psychedelics in a therapeutic setting, and I cannot share it with my fellows that I have seen for over 10,000 meetings, you know, it is not very pleasant, yeah? So this is why we try to establish PIR, and we are establishing it, so that there's a new possibility of recovering for recovering addicts to use psychedelic therapy and not have to be shy about it, and be able to use the tool of sharing. I think I have to go on with the next slide. Yeah. Very important. PIR is a peer-led, self-organizing, and non-professional thing, you know. So this is a self-organized, self-help groups. It relies on the selfless service of its own members to generate resources, expand its infrastructure, and develop a robust program in addition to hosting the fellowship's meetings. This is, by the way, the same thing for all the abstinence programs, you know, all the 12-step programs, you know, they are completely self-organized. So it's addicts helping addicts, you know, alcoholics helping alcoholics. Now, next one. PIR was actually founded in late 2015 and now comes an important information too that was not mentioned in the curriculum. From now on, I will say like Kevin F., you know, because his family name, we usually do not mention our family names, you know, when it comes to talks on the program. So this is also here very clearly. It was Kevin F., Dimitri M., and Steve S. In 2017, after Kevin met Todd, Casey, Deb, Don, and others at the Psychedelic Science Conference in San Jose, PIR meetings went online. Through the massive influx of demand in online recovery meetings due to the pandemic, membership grew exponentially. Oh, I'm not English speaking. And today, PIR boasts over 20 online meetings every week. Also, growth has been primarily in North America. Efforts from members in the UK, Australia, and South Africa encourage PIR's future as a global fellowship. We would also love to start one in Berlin. Members of this audience are invited to attend an online meeting if it is marked open. Now you have here the possibility to scan it, and you find the meeting list, but you can also go online and Google just PIR, and you find a meeting list. Now, why are there open meetings and closed meetings? You know, as I mentioned, not everyone wants to have a coming out of his problems, you know. So there are closed meetings and open meetings. But usually it's like this: if you attend an online meeting, and you identify as a guest in the beginning and say like, listen, I just want to attend the meeting. The meeting can also have a consensus to say, okay, you can stay. I would strongly suggest that you maybe try it. Online it's possible, you don't have to go anywhere. And as PIR is an anonymous program, please abstain from closed meetings, or at least ask at the beginning of the meeting. That's what I said. And we would really welcome if you check it out. I could talk now for hours about, also the possibilities of using sharing meetings for integration processes, but that's a whole different presentation, We can talk about it later. So, journalists and other media have profiled PIR's founding members on occasion and have produced very well-reported coverage. Thanks to unintended search engine optimization, if your query includes the phrase psychedelics and recovery, the result is either PIR's website or articles and podcasts featuring Kevin and others sharing their stories. So if you are interested, go online. Okay, 2 minutes. Quick. Okay, then we jump to the last slide. Also, academics have taken notice as well, including advanced graduate work by public health students featuring interviews on PIR members. There's also a review paper by the members of the Hopkins Psychedelic Research Team. The review paper encourages further study to gain better insight into possible mechanisms of change and a more detailed understanding of synergies between psychedelic treatment of substance abuse disorder and 12-step programs. I really thank you. I had to rush a little bit through this presentation, and you felt my nervousness because I wanted to stick as close as possible to the curriculum that was designed by Kevin, If you have any questions, not only in the question and answer session, I'm around, I'm a volunteer too, and so please approach me, and I will try to answer everything that might be still in the air. That's what we are trying now, because you will see Kevin, and he is the co-founder, as you heard. Oh, okay. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, if we have Kevin here, but before, thank you, Wolfgang. This was...
Hi, Kevin. How was the concert?
I'm very tired, but good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you, Wolfgang, for presenting that information on PIR. And just in addition to the background that was read about me, my personal recovery journey began with ibogaine in 2011 for treatment of opiate use disorder. And because of the consequences of some of my actions, I was coerced to go to 12-step meetings and discovered that I couldn't talk about my ibogaine experiences. So that was really the foundation for later on coming to try to find other people that shared a similar experience. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you very much for the conference organizers, and be delighted to take any questions that people have.
Okay, great. So thank you, Wolfgang, again. This was like a really personal and courageous talk. Really impressed. Are there any questions? Okay, so we have a question here.
Yes, hello. Thank you for the talk. I would have one question, considering as you mentioned, Wolfgang, that the 12-step program has an essential part of it is the spiritual, or let's say, believe in a higher power, right? Not limited to any religion or something, but the spiritual belief. If psychedelic experiences are introduced into this program in a way, or used in conjunction with the program, would you say that this spiritual part is it even possible to separate it from the experience, or would it even be deliberately used to enhance and potentiate this underlying essential part of the program?
I would suggest that Kevin maybe answers first so he can be a bit more part of the whole discussion. I can also say something about it.
Wolfgang, would you mind repeating the question as well? I couldn't hear it as clearly as I can hear you.
Okay, I give my microphone to the guy who comes.
Hi, Kevin. Again, so the 12-step program has, as I understood, an essential part of it is the religious or the spiritual, not religious, I'm sorry, the spiritual or the belief in a higher power in a way. And I'm wondering whether there's the possibility, if you introduce psychedelic experiences, to separate those things at all, yeah? Or whether it would be used deliberately to enhance this point.
That's an excellent question. To go back to the story of Bill Wilson, so he had this mystical experience in the hospital while he was being treated for alcohol use disorder, and then many years later, experiencing chronic depression, not being able to overcome a lifelong affliction to depression, led him back to LSD treatment. And he had these experiences that reminded him of this mystical experience in the hospital. And he went on to essentially feel that for alcoholics, for really strongly, severely struggling alcoholics who care nothing about God or, helping their fellow man or woman or just becoming a better person, they were struggling to stop drinking for a single day. He felt that the LSD experience might provide somewhat of a preview of what working the full 12 steps and having this spiritual awakening might be like. I like to use the metaphor that it was like taking an elevator up to the top of the 12th step, opening the door and seeing what that spiritual awakening could look like before the door would close and you descend back down to then compel the struggling alcoholic to work the steps. So the question is about, do we see the potential for there being a separation? It's certainly possible. It was my experience on Ibogaine that I don't know if I would characterize a communion with the divine and a sort of humbling realization that God is real and embrace this form of spirituality. That wasn't my experience. Really, my experience opened me up to this fascination of the vastness of the universe. And that provided me the humility of identifying myself as just a small piece of that greater whole, which was a very powerful experience to have given the state that I was in.
Great, we have a question there, I think.
First of all, I just want to say great initiative. I think this is a thing that needs to be integrated. But I'm just wondering, obviously I understand this is a 12-step program and it is run by members for members sort of thing. But is there also, from your side, a chance to maybe integrate this into actual therapy for addiction? Is this something that's being done already, or are we doing research for this?
Again, I would prefer if Kevin has a chance to answer it, not because he knows better or whatever, but to give him a chance to say something.
Sure, and that's an excellent question. I wanted to emphasize in this presentation that the abstinence-based model, the 12-step model, remains the dominant, right? Most people, their understanding of what someone has to do to recover is based on that perspective, which I don't say that we agree with that personally, that should be the path that people take. That's not my belief. But as the fellowship itself functions with this principle of non-professionalism, I personally think that the specific needs of people navigating the psychedelic experience, learning about how to apply elements of psychedelic integration with recovery after they receive treatment, needs to take on some more sophisticated clinical technique. So I am personally interested in helping grow the PIR fellowship in a way that's a little bit different than the way that AA and NA does, because I think not only is it a safety issue, but I think it'll be critical to sort of blend and combine the elements of peer support with the clinical treatment models, because it's the peer support that will be part of an individual's community effort. And the community effort is something that can stay with them for a very long time, for decades in some of our cases. And, we're not going to be receiving treatment from the psychiatrist or the therapist that did our psychedelic treatment for that long, but this community-led effort will help sustain people's individual recovery.
Thank you, Kevin.
Hey, thank you very much for your talk and your work. So I'm a little bit ignorant to the European AA system and what exists over here, but I'm very well versed in what goes on in America. And AA is somewhat of a discipline. However, the American recovery system is a multi-billion-dollar machine that has been resistant to, we were talking about PAT, but before PAT there was MAT, okay, medical or medication-assisted therapy. They didn't like that. They really don't like PAT. So what are are you aware of this? Do you have plans to combat this? And could you just speak a little bit to this topic? I think you know where I'm going with that.
Okay, again, Kevin will say something, but I'm going to say something too after.
Sure. And I can be even more cynical than that. I think the addiction treatment industry complex, once they figure out how to make money off of combining psychedelic assisted therapy, they will absolutely embrace the model. I make presentations on a variety of things related to psychedelics, not always with PIR, but I'm very active in the professional networks, which include the for-profit models of addiction treatment in the United States, which, by the way, boast abysmal outcomes in terms of their efficacy, but they're happy to charge a premium in order to, do their best, I guess. So yes, we certainly have our work cut out for us to change the industry, but make no mistake about it, when FDA approval comes for certain psychedelic treatments for addiction and the regulatory compliance infrastructure is there, businesses will absolutely seize upon the promise of psychedelic assisted therapy and will evolve, will become more open-minded when their wallets compel them to.
Okay.
It's a very profound answer, thank you.
We're already a bit over time. Maybe we can have one last question from somewhere here. And yeah, last question, and then.
Thank you. Thanks for the nice talk, and I think it's a nice initiative. Play the devil's advocate a little bit. So, are you guys concerned about any type of relapse? Let's say in an addict in recovery, that this might, because we all know that the addict mind can be quite sneaky. So in terms of, so either back to the old addiction or developing maybe because I know that psychedelics are not physically dependent, but maybe then they start misusing psychedelics for more psychological effects or some sort of escapism. I don't know if you guys are concerned about this or not.
Yes, we are concerned about it, and Kevin will talk about it also, but I need to say something about it, because this is exactly the reason why we have PIR, because to try to keep it as short as possible. Yes, it can be a relapse. Quite honestly, the talk about, what is addictive and what is not addictive, broccoli is very addictive to people that have an eating disorder, So we cannot ban broccoli, because we want to save the, and the same thing is with all the other stuff, It can be sex, it can be food, it can be anything, So in 12-step programs, and I'm not generalizing it as AA or NA, because they are human beings and they make a lot of mistakes, by the way, you know, also in the way of publishing. But, you know, there are tools that are developed. Sharing is a very important tool. Working the 12 steps, I can't go into detail, you know. Sharing with a sponsor, you know, and I'm not talking about somebody giving you money, but somebody you really trust. There are so many things about it. So these are the tools that, that provide us the safety to not relapse on something. Now, that's a very critical thing. I give you a personal example. You know, I have a triple bypass, you know, and naturally they give me OxyContin, you know. They had to, you know, naturally, because otherwise my heart would have been collapsed immediately because of the pain factor. Now, I'm addicted to opiates. And so usually this would be a relapse. So what do? You know, I call people in my fellowship, I call my sponsor, I make it open, I share it, you know, and I use the tool and I'm still here. And I didn't relapse. But, you know, if you take the substance, it would be a relapse. So this is why we need PIR, you know, and this is why we need professionals, therapists and medical doctors to know about it, not to use it. But if an addict comes and says like, no, sorry, I can't take this treatment because it will be a relapse, then they can at least say, maybe you talk to your PIR friends, you know, but only if they have the information. And that's what I needed to say. And now it's up to Kevin.
I'll keep it very brief because I know we went over, so thank you to the conference for allowing me. We have decided to incorporate various precedent from the 12-step literature, like Wolfgang just described, the use of prescribed medication. We've also embraced some of the philosophies of the behavioral addictions fellowships. When you're recovering from sex addiction or, you know, eating disorders, overeating anonymous, they're not professing that you remain abstinent for life from sex or eating, right? They have a stratification of different types of behaviors that are, you know, either totally fine, some that are problematic that you want to take a look at, and then what they would call a bottom line behavior, which is something you should not engage in. So we kind of incorporate ideas like that. I would be happy to expand beyond that, but just out of respect for the time, that's where I'll leave it for now. But thank you very much for that question.
Great. Okay, I'm so sorry to end it right here, but we're already like 7 minutes over time. So thank you so much again, Wolfgang Wimmer. This was like a really great talk. I have 100 more questions, but also thank you to Kevin. And if you have any questions for Wolfgang, he will be still here.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank
and now
you.
go back to...